I would say the last part of what we have decided to do about Savitri's different personalities, and also to take up the last section, that is Savitri and the Divine Mother. Well, we are going to have a whole day for this, I mean the morning and the afternoon session. But before I come to the main text, I have a few clarifications to make. One is, where does this picture of the Divine Mother or the Supreme, where does it come? You see, if you see in Book 10, Canto 4, towards the end of the dialogue, there are some very important lines we have noted. Well, I cannot really guide you because, as I told you, my edition is completely different from yours. However, if you don't have to follow, there are only a couple of lines I'll quote. It says, then death the last time answered Savitri. Mine is page 744. That is the 3 pages before the end of Canto 4. If you can come down, it will be good. Then death the last time answered Savitri. If truth supreme transcends her shadow here, severed by knowledge and the climbing vasts, what bridge can cross the gulf that she has left between her and the dream world she has made? Or who could hope to bring her down to men and persuade to tread the harsh globe with wounded feet, leaving her unapproachable glory and bliss, wasting her splendor on pale earthly air? Is thine that strength, O beauty of mortal limbs? O soul who flutterest to escape my net? Who then art thou, hiding in human guise? Thy voice carries the sound of infinity. Knowledge is with thee. Truth speaks through thy words. The light of things beyond shines in thy eyes. But where is thy strength to conquer time and death? Hast thou God's force to build heaven's values here? For truth and knowledge are an idle gleam. If knowledge brings not power to change the world, if might comes not to give to truth her right, a blind force, not truth, has made this ignorant world. A blind force, not truth, orders the lives of men. By power, not light, the great gods rule the world. Power is the arm of God, the seal of fate. O human claimant to immortality, reveal thy power, lay bare thy spirit's force. Then will I give back to thee Satyavan. Or if the mighty mother is with thee, show me her face, that I may worship her. Let deathless eyes look into the eyes of death. An imperishable force, touching brute things, transform earth's death into immortal life. Then can thy dead return to thee and live. The prostrate earth perhaps shall lift her gaze and feel near her the secret body of God. and love and joy overtake fleeing time. You must have noted here one major idea. That is, all this while we see Savitri having great knowledge. Knowledge is with thee, truth speaks through thy words. But knowledge brings not power to change the world. This is the important thing. This is what happened till now in evolution. All the avatars till now have given us knowledge, including the great Gita. Shri Krishna gives us knowledge, wonderful knowledge, clarifies questions. The mind is clear as to what path to take, how to tread on that path, how to go become a devotee, and all that and all that. And because of this lacuna of the lack of power, things have not changed. Things have not been transformed. So all the avatars, great rishis, great saints and rishis, everybody, maharshis, everyone has given it the gyan. So with that power of knowledge, with that knowledge I would say, people have tried to change as much as possible. So there have been some individuals here and there that have benefited from the knowledge, put it into practice, realized some liberation, but mankind as such has not been transformed. Because this is the crucial line, knowledge brings not power to change the world. And this is what has happened now with the coming of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Mother discusses it very emphatically, and Sri Aurobindo too, that what the supermind brings down is the power of transformation. Otherwise, if you see, even the knowledge of supermind has been foreseen. Right from the Vedas and the Upanishads, people have known what supermind is all about, if not in full detail. But at least we have the notion that there is something called, not the notion, the concept. So what Sri Aurobindo and the Mother have done is not to bring the concept of supermind, but the power of supermind. Because Mother, I think there was a question in this regard. And Mother says, unless and until Superman brings this power, the Superman himself will not be safe. Because of this ignorance and the violence and the vengeance and this kind of a jealousy of the human mind. He may attack the Superman race if there are people there. They may destroy. So the Mother says that's why the very first thing that Superman has to bring in is the power. Both to change humanity and also for self-protection. Because the human vileness is so intense, we are so jealous, we are so intolerable that a race superior to me has come. The fear that they may dominate me will be so intense that they may attempt to destroy. So the Mother makes it very clear that the first thing that Supermind will bring in is the power. And that is precisely the power that Sri Aurobindo is speaking of. And you see, it is given in the words of death. So it is not that death has no knowledge, it knows exactly what it is speaking. So it's giving the truth, saying, where is thy strength to conquer time and death? Knowledge will not conquer death. We have all the Upanishads and the Gita and the Vedas. You can learn it all by heart, but still you will be the same old person with all the ignorance. The power of transformation needs to be there. So very wisely and wonderfully here is Death who says, that reveal thy power, lay bare thy spirit's force. And I'm very impressed with your knowledge. That is what the Mahabharata story about Satyavan and Savitri is. That Yama is very happy, very pleased with the knowledge of Savitri. And so he can give back. So everywhere is this knowledge. But what Sri Aurobindo emphasizes here is not just the knowledge. So very beautifully he says, reveal thy power, lay bare thy spirit's force, then will I give back to thee Satyavan. Or if the mighty mother is with thee, show me her face that I may worship her. You see, now that means he can surrender, and he does surrender to this power, not to the knowledge. So that's the most important thing. Ultimately, he says, if you show me thy power, I will surrender, not before. And not only will I surrender to thee, I will return, I will give back Satyavan. Then will I give back to thee Satyavan. You see, there's a conquest of power. And it's not just the physical, brutal, brute, vital, or the mental forces. It has to be the supramental power. So that's one thing that I want all of us to understand, that the battle here requires power. And that was the last dialogue. And then, as if in answer to his request, there what Savitri does, and Savitri looked on death and answered not. Almost it seemed as if in his symbol shape the world's darkness had consented to heaven light, and God needed no more the inconscient screen. A mighty transformation came on her. So you see, this is a very dramatic moment. So death is asking to see the real face, the face of power. Where is the strength to conquer time and death? You see, what happens actually is that with this power, the supramental power, there is a transcendence of time and space. Try to understand it this way, but that the very fact that you get the supermind, or you have the supramental power and consciousness, you get into a different time zone. So that is why automatically you conquer time and death, because time and death are in this time zone of our normal time zone. And death belongs to this time zone. But deathlessness or immortality belongs to another time zone. So here, death is very rightly asking, let deathless eyes look into the eyes of death, an imperishable force touching brute things, transform earth's death into immortal life. So everywhere the emphasis is force. You see, if you read these lines, so many times force and power, force and power. And therefore, obviously, there has to be a change that comes in Savitri. Then the immortal's luster that had lit her face and tinted its radiance in her body's house, overflowing, made the air a luminous sea. In a flaming moment of apocalypse, the incarnation thrust aside its veil. I mean, try to dramatically see the movement that Savitri is having. It's not a physical movement, you don't thrust aside anything like that. But as she says here, and God needed no more the inconscient screen. That means she herself is a screen. Just as death has a screen, she's also is behind a screen. So she's kind of removing her own veil, and in the process she removes the veil of death also. It's a kind of a double process. And so she says, the incarnation thrust aside its veil. And what happens when this thrust aside? This is what I was referring to in one of my talks. You see, it was very surprising that Sri Aurobindo brings in here the transformation that's taking place in her. And what is the essence of this transformation? The contact and the awakening of the chakras. This is amazing how Sri Aurobindo has brought in this old tantric knowledge and power. I was telling you, isn't it, yesterday, I think, that the chakras have to take over. So this is the real transformation of the physical. So when the body is not required, its organs and its lung and its stomach, and because it's a chakra. So the same thing happens in Savitri now. It is not that suddenly she becomes, we see in the movies and a huge figure of Krishna comes. It's not that kind of a luminous figure. But Sri Aurobindo deals with the actual transformation. That is, all the chakras are awakened simultaneously. And one by one she says all the throat and this chakra and the heart chakra and emotional chakra, the navel chakra. So that is where is seeing that all the chakras from above to the navel, they're all there. And then her body itself is transformed. And with this transformation, what's happening? It is not just happening on the body level. There is a simultaneous connection with the supramental force. So you must imagine the transformation taking both on the level of consciousness as well as on the level of the physical. And this is where we see after the transformation, thus changed she waited for the word to speak. Eternity looked into the eyes of death, and darkness saw God's living reality. Then she says, I hail thee, almighty and victorious death, thou grandiose darkness of the infinite. O void that makest room for all to be, hunger that gnawest at the universe, consuming the cold remnants of the suns, and eatest the whole world with thy jaws of fire, waster of the energy that has made the stars, in conscience, carrier of the seeds of thought, etc. And then she says, thou art my shadow and my instrument. I have given thee thy awful shape of dread, and thy sharp sword of terror and grief and pain, to force the soul of man to struggle for light on the brevity of his half-conscious days. Thou art his spur to greatness in his works, the whip to his yearning for eternal bliss, his poignant need of immortality. Live, death, a while, be still my instrument. Now who is saying this? Not Savitri anymore. Look at this, he says, I have given thee thy awful shape of dread. So who is Savitri now? She is her transcendental aspect. So see, that I've been telling you this again and again. If as it says here, eternity looked into the eyes of death, it's not the mortal eyes. Eternity itself, the transcendental consciousness itself. You see, when the transcendental consciousness sees, the body itself has to be a new body. It cannot be the human body, the old human body of ignorance. So, we see the process. If you were to paint the whole picture, you will see death is asking for the power, as she says here, but where is thy strength to conquer time and death? He says, I would like to see you. So that's the first scene. The second scene is where Savitri is undergoing a physical transformation of all the chakras, and then at the same time the consciousness is ascending. And third, we see that there is the luminous body, the golden body of Savitri. That is the transcendental body. Now we see death. Death is still the form of death, remember. So eternity looks into the eyes of death. And what happened, we know after that was you must have done with Alok after that, or you will do, I don't know. Tomorrow, yeah. So then she says, live death a while, be still my instrument. So you see, she has conquered death, but she has conquered death as the transcendental mother, as the transcendental Savitri. So until and unless the human beings themselves evolve to that higher level, you are needed, and you are needed. And so perfectly she says, I have given thee the awful shape to force the soul of man to struggle for light on the brevity of his half-conscious days. Thou art his spur to greatness in his works. So you see, death has a positive role. It is man's spur to greatness. If we had all the time in front of us saying, I'll live eternally 300 years, 3,000 years, then the immediate thing would be we wouldn't have the spur, not only to greatness, even to work. If I say, no, I don't have to die, my body is going to be there eternally. And so all this effort for perfection, what we call, won't be there. So it is a negative positive force. And a negative positive force, now I would not say the word created, but brought in by the divine strategy. What can make, it is kind of, what can make man progress? All the time if you give, lollipops, he will not progress, he'll just eat and sleep. But there has got to be something, a kind of a whip. So that's why I call it the negative positive force. So Savitri is telling him, the whip to his yearning for eternal bliss, his poignant need of immortality. So that having said that, there's a transformation, and so this is the aspect of Savitri where we see her transformed into her transcendental form just before facing death. So that's one aspect that I wanted to deal with. Now after this we come to Canto 11, which is quite the central canto for all the vision of the future, the new creation, all that you were talking about yesterday. But I have a theme here to pursue. What happens to death after this? When she says, okay, you stay on for a while and all that. And of course we know at the end of this book, the death, tries to hide here and there, but the light of Savitri, it kind of, licks, light like a burning tongue licked up his thoughts. Light was a luminous torture in his heart. Light coursed a splendid agony through his nerves. His darkness muttered, perishing in her blaze. Now what went perishing in her blaze? It is the external mask, the external physical form of death. So once this external form was burnt, it got muttered and perishing in a blaze. So once the external is burnt off, now what comes through is the reality, the inner being. So you see, there is an immediate transformation that takes place in death himself. So this is what we have to understand, that Savitri transforming herself into her transcendental level is now helping death to transform itself. So that is the gain, if I can say, of death. You see, it reminds us of the war, of the fight between Ravana and Rama. Sri Ram. We all know in India about the mythology or the story that's behind why Ravan was so much against Sri Ram. Well, you don't know. Maybe anybody can tell. Why is it that Ravan was doing what he did? Stole Sita, had the Sri Lanka war and all that. What is the reason behind that? As Sri Aurobindo says, if you cannot love God, wrestle with Him. So there are two ways of identifying with the divine. Either through intense love or a wrestle. So Ravan chose to have this shortcut. And if you say that, you don't become a terrorist tomorrow saying that's a shortcut. Because you know, all this gyan, sometimes if it is misused, it can go haywire. But Ravan had a shortcut. But to be killed in the hands of the divine is not so easy. He could have been killed by one of those monkeys. There's Jambavan, there's this, and there's Hanuman and all these fellows. But none of them could kill Ravan. Because he himself has a power in himself. You see the tapasya he does. He has the blessings of Durga. So he is a great tapasvi himself. So you see, if you want to face the divine face to face, you have to have your own tapasvi, your own strength. That is the strength that death has here. The death has challenged Savitri only to be transformed in her, by her. You see, that's the marvelous thing. You see, all the arguments that we have which are extraordinarily powerful. I mean, almost at a time, somebody says death gives a thesis and Savitri gives the antithesis. Savitri doesn't give antithesis. She is not, because thesis and antithesis, they come on the rational level. But it is always the reason and beyond the reason. I mean, there are beautiful arguments going on two parallel levels. So those of us who want to go by reason, there's no better guide than death. Perfect logic, perfect reasoning. And if you just choose the passages from reason, I mean, you will become a perfect follower of death. You say, wow, what a reason, what logic, what thought. I mean, you cannot argue death because he has reason and logic with him. And reason can make, as you know, black and white and black. So this is a master rationalist. So that is why Savitri doesn't take him on the rational level. Then it becomes a quarrel, not a debate. As you say in Hindi, tu tu mai mai. We don't want to get into that tu tu mai mai business. So he is always attacking her somewhere. She is always on a higher level. So with your argument, she is giving a synthesis, not an antithesis. She is embracing your reason and yet elevating your argument to a higher level, saying, no, this is the fulfillment of your thought. So the beauty of Savitri's answers is that there is a constant guidance given to death. So my point was that death is giving this powerful argument, challenging Savitri, so that Savitri, in the good sense, feels cornered at a point. And that is the dialogue he has here. He says, all that is fine. You have all the knowledge. But where is your power? So even death kind of, instigates Savitri to elevate herself into her own transcendental form. This is what Ravan had done to Sri Ram by stealing Sita. If he had not stolen Sita, then Ram would have been, happy-go-lucky guy with his wife in the forest and Jangal mein Mangal. And there won't have been any this war. And if there was no war, if there's no Kurukshetra in the Ramayana, then the whole purpose of Sri Ram would have been a failure. Because he had come to conquer the opposite, the falsehood. A falsehood which was tremendously powerful. You see, that's the balance we see. This asuras have the power but no knowledge. The divine has the knowledge but no power. You see, that's how in the world things are at present. So just the knowledge is no good. So we need that power. Now you know why this knowledge and consciousness needed that power and Shakti. And this is the real meaning of the dual power of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Because had she not come, Sri Aurobindo, with all respects to him, would have remained a Maharshi in a nice cave in Pondicherry, and you and me wouldn't have been here sitting at all. Because there would have been no ashram. A few people around him, like Sri Raman Maharishi, people coming and visiting and all. So for what he is asking for the power, Sri Aurobindo literally brought the power. And that is why there is for the first time a dual incarnation. Because until now there was only a single incarnation of only consciousness and knowledge, no power. So this is the entanglement, or this is the challenge that death gives to Savitri. It helps Savitri to reveal herself. You see, when did Sri Ram reveal his avatarhood? Do you remember? When did he know that he is the avatar? There was a moment in Ramayana. Can you guess?
When the ocean is not giving the path.
No, a little before that. Who came from Sri Lanka to the side of Vibhishan? And there was a fight between Vibhishan and somebody. And when Sri Ram from behind the tree, Vali, Sugriva, not Vibhishan, sorry, Sugriva and Vali. It is at that time, for the first time, Sri Ram realizes his avatarhood. And that is the incident I'm saying, where suddenly, as she says, that the incarnation revealed itself, or that the veil was opened up. So there are always these incidents where the avatar becomes himself or herself. So coming back to Savitri and death. So death provokes Savitri to become the avatar, to reveal herself as the avatar. Till now she was a beautiful daughter, a beautiful queen, a beautiful wife, a beautiful daughter-in-law. Somebody, I think Premananda Kumar is very fond of bringing out this role of daughter-in-law of Savitri. Normally we don't think, but she says, no, why? She's a woman, so she has to be all these things. Not just an avatar. But I don't think that lady was a good daughter-in-law. Because she hardly, not even a good mother, she bore her child, and Mr. Andre, she left him with some of the aunts or uncles, I don't know. Went away to Algeria in pursuit of her own occultism. Poor Andre grew up alone. She had no time for all this morality, a good daughter-in-law, a good son-in-law. She said, yeah, I'm on a high scale of things and I don't want to go by human rules and get a good name of a good mother, nor was this man a good father or a good this thing. They were like that, going towards all your morality and all that thing. Leave it to Premananda Kumar and some Ananda Kumar to do all these things. We may bring in our own, impose our own ideas on them and bring out the Sri Aurobindo's. There's a big quarrel. Sri Aurobindo was not a good husband or a good husband because he never lived with his wife. Why did he get married? But the letters are beautiful. And once my wife says, I wish I had married Sri Aurobindo just because of his letters. I said, then you could take your letters and marry him. But what I mean is, they're so loving. Such a great depth of love that even it's not the living together, it is this essence of love that we see in Sri Aurobindo and his letters. But there is a good debate. No, they should have lived together as a husband and wife, blah, blah. So all these moral, human parameters, let's not apply to them. Whereas, people do write articles, however. So this is the avatar. And she is the protagonist. So she has all the roles and ultimately she becomes the avatar. Now this is where I would, one more thing let me tell you before I take up the last conversation. Now, death helps Savitri to become herself, her incarnate power. Then once she removes, as we see here, that blaze, burning in that blaze, something has been removed from him. Perishing in her blaze. What got done? His darkness muttered and perishing in her blaze. So once the outer mask was pulled out, what is death? Divine himself? Light. Because originally in our Upanishads, Yama is a Puranic name. The Upanishadic name is Vivaswat, the son of Vivaswan, the sun god. And so, light himself. So what is the relation between Savitri and death? तो हुई ना बात क्यों झगड़ा किस बात की ultimately you see the fallacy of the whole thing. After all, they come out to be brothers and sisters, or brother and sister, because she is born of Savita, the sun god. He is Vivaswan, Vivaswat, whatever name it, the sun god of Vivaswan. So imagine both these forces are nothing but a wonderful, close, loving each other, brother, sister. And for the sake of you and me, have taken the role of chalo, we have a fight at home. Maybe Isha and Shruti sometimes they say, I'll put this mask and. So for the sake of the play, they put on masks. And in Europe we have, what is that day called, where you put the mask on? Halloween day. On the Halloween day you put masks. So must have been that great Halloween day when the day of creation, somebody said, hey sister, I'll take up this, and sister said, I'll take up this mask. And that game, for 1 second they put that thing on, and it's lasting, unfortunately, for all of us. So what I want to say is, you see, ultimately this is the truth. So why do we make big stories about Yama and death and Savitri? Maybe this whole seminar should have been retitled, There's no debate. It's all the greatest romantic love story, I would say. Not just between Savitri and Satyavan. On the higher level, you see the brother and sister having a lovely argument, chit-chat, घर पे हम लोग झगड़ा करते हैं भाई बहन. It's something like that. But now you see, what is that Vivaswan? Who is that sun child, or the son of the sun god? He too undergoes. When he reveals his astitva, his reality, we see him, a marvelous, a god of death becomes a god of love. And we see Savitri herself is the goddess of love. So when we really go into that higher level, that is why Mother says, if you go on that level, there is no ignorance, no suffering, no pain. ये झमेला ही नहीं है, because we understand that after all brothers sisters. Brothers sisters don't kill each other. Argument करते हैं, ये करते हैं, वो करते हैं. Then mommy comes and says, hey, why, children, why are you fighting? After all, it's dinner time, come back. So it's that as you rise in your in your consciousness to higher levels, we begin to understand that all this is after all a Leela. And the greatest player of Leela is that fellow called Radha Krishna, who enjoys every moment. Killing of Kamsa is already a Leela for him. Killing of this fellow is a Leela for him. He goes on the snake and dances on the Leela for him. So if you really look at Radha Krishna, especially Krishna, it's all a play. And a play in delight. So here we see our great death transforming. And a magnificent transformation here, Book 11, Canto 1, right in the beginning, I think you should know, no, it's quite a lot, 7, 8 pages, I don't know if you can find out, where we see the transformation of death. The lines that I want to read are, his is the dumb will of atom and clod. Well, it's all in the middle of nowhere, so I cannot tell you. Maybe I'll tell you the para. As one drowned in a sea of splendor and bliss. Can you find that para? Page 680. Then turn the page. So I'll take up a line from here. I'll take up the line from, say, all grace and glory. Get that line? Tell the page if you have that. 680, right? On 7th line from, okay. Now this is the transformation that has come on death. All grace and glory and all divinity were here collected in a single form. All worshipped eyes looked through his form, his from one face. He bore all Godheads in his grandiose limbs. An oceanic spirit dwelt within, intolerant and invincible in joy, a flood of freedom and transcendent bliss into immortal lines of beauty rose. Now this is the stages of transformation. In him the fourfold being bore its crown, that wears the mystery of a nameless name, the universe writing its tremendous sense in the inexhaustible meaning of a word. In him the architect of the visible world, at once the art and artist of his works, spirit and seer and thinker of things seen, Virat, who lights his campfires in the suns, and the star-entangled ether in his whole, expressed himself with matter for his speech. Now, this is the first, death is undergoing fourfold transformation. And fourfold means you will see as we go along. So Virat in Indian philosophy is the spirit of the external material universe. We call that Virat Purusha. He is the material world. Because this is again the Upanishadic idea that that the divine is there on different levels, or the divine has manifested himself on different levels. So that is why in our Indian philosophy, all is Brahman. So matter, physical matter, the external matter itself is Brahman, and on that level he is called the Virat Purusha. So he would say, Virat who lights his campfires in the suns, and what's the next line is here? Yeah, expressed himself with matter for his speech. So that means matter is the expression of the divine. And so Virat is the name of the material divine. Right? So we see here, and first the physical, then we will see matter is his means and his spiritual sign. He hangs the thought upon a lashes lift, in the current of the blood makes flow the soul. His is the dumb will of atom and of cloud, a will that without sense or motive acts, an intelligence needing not to think or plan. The world creates itself invincibly, for its body is the body of the Lord, and in its heart stands Virat, King of Kings. In him shadows his form the golden child, who in the sun-capped vast cradles his birth. So now we have the Virat Purusha, who is using matter as his expression. And you see there's an interesting line here. He says, a will that without sense or motive acts. Because you see, Virat is the pure matter here. There's no senses here. There's no, as he calls next line, an intelligence needing not to think. So imagine pure matter before there was life, there was water, there was this animal, there was human being. But that too is Brahman. And the word is vastness. Matter is tremendously, inexhaustibly vast. So as I quoted to you once, I think during my talk I quote it again here, which is again one of those letters. No, this is a aphorism, I think, where it says Brahman is full of Ananda, being a mountain as much as a Superman. The delight is equal, he says. So that is why he is a Virat Purusha, so he is equally in Ananda. So it does not mean that as matter he was as Nirananda, full of sadness, Are, kya ho raha? No, he is in absolute bliss. Then if he was in absolute bliss, why did that life form come about? You see, bliss was perfect. But only now there is, he says, I am immobile. Let there be mobility. A mobility which expresses his dynamic consciousness. Because the divine is the dynamic consciousness. So dynamics means movement, not status. So the whole evolution begins only with this sense of dynamism, of movement, of senses, of will. So all these things now come. Second stage, he says, Hiranyagarbha, author of thoughts and dream, who sees the invisible and hears the sounds that never visited a mortal ear, discoverer of unthought realities, truer to truth than all we have ever known. He is the leader on the inner roads, a seer. He has entered the forbidden realms. So remember all the time what's happening. It is death which is showing to Savitri his Nija Swarupa. That what is he after all? I am Virat, I am Hiranyagarbha. It is the Vishwarup Darshan to Savitri given by death. I mean, what a queer combination. It is not Lord Krishna who comes and says, I am the Vishwarup Darshan. It is death which is saying. So, what we have to understand is that death himself is the supreme. There's no difference. So we have normally in Hiranyagarbha, we have other words also say the thinker and the dreamer. So that's what Sri Aurobindo is telling. A seer, he has entered the forbidden realms. A magician with the omnipotent wand of thought, he builds the secret uncreated worlds. Armed with the golden speech, the diamond eye, his is the vision and the prophecy. Imagist casting the formless into shape, traveler and hewer of the unseen paths, he is the carrier of the hidden fire. He is the voice of the ineffable. He is the invisible hunter of the light and the angel of mysterious ecstasies, the conqueror of the kingdoms of the soul. So this is the second level. Third one, a third spirit stood behind their hidden cause, a mass of superconscience closed in light, creator of things in his all-knowing sleep. All from his stillness came as grows a tree. He is our seed and core, our head and base. All light is but a flash from his closed eyes, and all wise truth is mystic in his heart. The omniscient ray is shut behind his lids. He is the wisdom that comes not by thought, etc. You have a long description. Here we have the Sushupti, the third level, the Virat Purusha, we have the Hiranyagarbha, we have the third level, which is actually is called the Prajna. In order to the same terminology, we can say Virat, Hiranyagarbha, and Prajna. The Sushupti is another psychological terminology. We may not take that, but as we say, it is the Karana. That's why Sri Aurobindo calls it as the seed and core. Is the causal. If you want to say the English word is causal consciousness. That which has even caused the Virat and the Hiranyagarbha. So he says, I am also that causal consciousness. I am the Prajna.
Why Sri Aurobindo doesn't give a name to it?
Pardon?
Why Sri Aurobindo doesn't give a name to it?
Well, it will be complicated for you, so you better kept it into causal consciousness only. So he's telling you that he sleeps in the atom. He sleeps in man. Because he is there, the inconscient does its work. Because he is there, the inconscient does its work. Because he is there, the world forgets to die. He is the center of the circle of God. He is the circumference of nature's run. His slumber is an almightiness in things. Awake, he is the eternal and supreme. That's the third one. Now we go to the fourth one. Uh, he says, above was the brooding bliss of the infinite, its omniscient and omnipotent repose, its immobile silence absolute and alone. All powers were woven in countless concords here. The bliss that made the world in his body lived. Love and delight were the head of the sweet form. In the alluring meshes of their snare, recaptured the proud, blissful members held, all joys outrunners of the panting heart and fugitive from life's outstripped desire. Of course, this level, normally we don't describe it too much because it's called the Turiya, Turiya, the fourth level, which is actually the transcendental level. Is beyond the common grip of the mind and the levels of the mind. It's called Turiya, the beyond, the fourth, the unmanifest. So we see here, what's wonderful here is that just as Savitri showed her own transcendental self, Death also reveals his own transcendental self. I mean, it's a magnificent scenario, you see. Both the transcendents are there. Two looked upon each other. Soul saw soul. S capital saw S capital. I mean, one of the most dramatic moments in the entire Savitri. I mean, for me, it is that Vishwarup Darshan. And they're not one, both the beings who are supposed to be opponents fighting each other. Now comes out the truth. So from here, there is a different scenario that comes into the play, and we'll have to change the scene a little bit here. So now this is what I was telling you is the fifth aspect of Savitri. Fifth we have been doing last 4, 5 days. That means the fifth aspect where Savitri is the transcendental self. And it's only the transcendent who can transform death. So we have seen till there. Now after that is that famous speech here that I will take up in the afternoon session, but there's one clarification I'd like to make before we take up that session. But now you understand, or you would understand the last conversation, because if you have not given this preparation, this kind of the ultimate scenario, it will not be clear for you. But if you remember, you all know, and some of you are even eager to say, hey, the dialogue between Savitri and the Divine Mother. But somebody questioned, where is the Divine Mother at all? The last dialogue is not between the mother and between Savitri and the Divine Mother. She says, oh Lord, the dialogue or the monologue is between Savitri and the Supreme Lord. But I must have been dreaming when I said dialogue between Savitri and the Divine Mother. I was not dreaming, I was talking to my wife, ask her, I was not dreaming. I talked to her, discussed with her, and she says, Anand, kya title tu jaldi bata? I said, Savitri dialogue debate with Mother. So I asked myself, why did I call the Divine Mother? Is it an error? Or an anxiety or some kind of a fancy? It came out on the spur of the moment, but then when I analyzed myself, I said, yes, I did it right. Unconsciously I did it right, not that I gave it much of a thought. Because textually it doesn't go. It's the monologue between Savitri and the Supreme, the Lord. But, is it? Look here. There is no difference. If it is the Supreme who has chosen or it is I who have chosen. I prefer to say it is the Supreme instead of me. You know, it's like this. In the terrestrial evolution, man who is emerging out of the inconscience and ignorance is guided by the Supreme. And the Supreme, in order to manifest his reign upon earth, labors to uplift the human consciousness so as to establish the divine consciousness. And for this, he does not delegate someone, but he himself manifests physically, even in the ignorance, to accomplish his work. And it is I who have been appointed to raise up man and the creation out of this inconscience. It is I who am responsible. What I wish, the Lord also wishes. I am the Supreme in the unmanifest. But in the creation, the Supreme acts only through me, exists only by me, and wills nothing but what I will. So this is the Mother. This is the Supreme. So when we see in the last portion the dialogue, the monologue, you will see the same line that Sri Aurobindo is having, that when she says, when the Lord says that you are my will, I will act through you. This is exactly the same word the Mother is using here that what I wish, the Lord also wishes. I am the supreme in the unmanifest, but in the creation, the supreme acts only through me, exists only by me, and wills nothing but I will. But you must have seen there's a little difference here. She says, I am the supreme in the unmanifest, but in the manifest, I am the channel, I am the expression, I am the force. But why this separation? That I am the supreme in the unmanifest, but in the manifestation, he says, exists only through me. He says, but in the creation, the supreme acts, but acts only through me. But in the unmanifest, I am the supreme. How do we explain this dichotomy there?
Manifest they are one. There's no differentiation, but on the in the creation there is still the levels which is not divine. So there she has to work.
Yeah, you're right. Very well. So in the unmanifest, you say they are one. But how are they one? Or why are they one?
Yeah, what we have is this and somebody else sisters and brothers or whatever is divine.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it didn't occur to me. Why are they one?
There is not needed the Shakti there where there is unmanifest.
This Shakti is not needed.
To exist in the unmanifest. Whereas to manifest that Shakti
Is required.
Shakti is there.
You see, the mother in her story, she says, when the Lord decided to manifest, He brought me forth. The phrase is, He brought me forth. The Sat Chit Ananda, the Chit is brought forth. Until then, it was only non-hyphenated, Sachidananda is one word. But in manifestation, it becomes Sat dash Chit dash Tapas dash Ananda dash. It becomes a consciousness that comes forth. In manifestation, there is this energy, the consciousness, the force that comes out. So there she says, I am one. There is no distinction to be made, but for men, the Supreme is someone beyond everything, in his transcendence, who cannot be attained. He who is above ignorance and does not concern himself with anything. For them, I would rather say that it is the Supreme who has done this or willed this. I do not want to meddle with their idea of the Supreme. Because if I say that it is I who had done this or had wished so instead of the Supreme, then it would be like a disaster, a shock. People with their ego would not be able to accept that the Supreme could manifest in the inconscience. It would seem to them a folly. It is for this reason that I avoid speaking of myself and I prefer to use the word Supreme. To me, it makes no difference. And moreover, people remain convinced that it is the Supreme who is guiding them. But Mother, for me, you are the Supreme. I do not know anyone else but you as the Supreme. Mother, it does not bother me. If one calls me the Supreme or not, it makes no difference to me. I know who I am. I do not crave for big names like an egoist. What I know is that the work advances and what it is I'm trying to prepare and not what will add to or aggrandize my name so that men call me the Supreme. You see, the humility of the divine, it's a remarkable sentence. She says, I do not care. As long as the work and the purpose for which I've come is on, I don't need the name and the fame and the appreciation by human beings. I wash my hands of all this. I do not need it. I'm very happy like this. As long as men are convinced that it is the Supreme who has done this or that it is He who protects them and guides them, it's fine with me. I do not want to interfere in all this or to proclaim that it is I who have done it. For in reality it's the same thing. I do not want to force people. If it pleases them to state that it is the Supreme who acts, and not me, what difference does it make to say it in one way or another? And this one way or another, it makes a difference for the Indians. Because we say it's Brahman who is the supreme. How can there be the mother as the supreme? If Sachidananda is the supreme, how can the Aditi be the supreme? And then they challenge Sri Aurobindo. He says, how could you write that? Sri Aurobindo says, yes. Because Brahman himself is the child of Aditi.
She is the message and the messenger.
She is the mother and the deliverer. He says Brahman is the child of the mother. So where is the question of Brahman? You people may call Brahman as the supreme, but whose child is Brahman? He is the child of the mother, of the divine Aditi. So he says, for me, it is Aditi is the supreme. All your Brahman and Vishnu and there's the other third guy, who is that? Shiva and all these bacche inke. So he says, don't quarrel with me because the mother is the creatrix. And these are all Godheads who have come later who has her as her children. So, but in spite of all that, look at the mother, she says, I'm not an egoist, I don't need all that, let it be fine. For me it is like this. But for you it is different. I am the supreme for you. And Mona says, yes, mother. It is he who in his transcendence upholds the universe and is immanent in the creation, who resides in the smallest atom. One who is responsible for the terrestrial evolution and its manifestations, for lifting it up to the light and Ananda. But I cannot proclaim to the people that I am the supreme. People will not be able to accept it. She is the supreme? How can that be? It's not possible. For them the supreme is someone who is unimaginable. You see, she gives a beautiful logic. If you look at her photo and says, my God, how can she be supreme? My Aditi have painted her so beautiful and she has all those colors and beauty and youth and long hair falling here and the instrument. How can this lady be the supreme? You see, the dichotomy, the argument, the doubt that comes in the human mind. So she is aware of that. She says, for them the supreme is someone who is unimaginable. So people don't want a personality of the supreme. They don't want to give you a personal name. Yesterday I was talking to somebody. They said, no, there is somebody, God or goddess, but there is somebody called power. Because they are afraid of giving a form to that power. An unimaginable power is best. Because it's neutral. It has no face, it has no name, it has no gender, it has nothing. So she says, unimaginable. They will go mad if they think in this way. The ego will not be able to accept it. That's why I prefer to say that it is the Supreme who wished thus and never pronounce that it is I who have so wished or I who have chosen. I tell you, it's by choice that I choose to remain behind the veil. Do you understand? Have you understood well? Yes, Mother. And
Question, that before there is the process between Savitri and the death, and where she is shown her transcendence and the light, and he also. But this is, as my understanding, impersonal. But I don't know how you would describe it, that they can be equally on this level. What is the how you describe it, or the quality, or what is this? Is this personal? We just have now the supreme is personal.
yeah, you see, even at that level, there is a personal level. But beyond that, there is again the impersonal. You see, both Savitri and Death, as now we have seen them as equals, we said they are brother and sister. But if you go beyond this mythology of Vivaswan and all the names, there is a single power. There is a single power which is impersonal. And then when the Supreme, then the Supreme takes on a body and a form and manifests himself. So what Death is telling here, remember that Death tells Savitri that I want to see your form of power. Here there's a little incident I won't read, but just to narrate to you that that how this apparently a form so apparently is not so powerful, but she's meek and weak and But once somebody from Hyderabad, it seems, sent through someone 4 large volumes of books. I don't know the theme. So he said, please give it to the mother. And mother was in a distribution or wherever. So the gentleman offered those 4 big volumes. He said, sorry mother, they're too heavy for you. Mother came close to his ear and he said, I carry the universe in my hands. I mean, a little sentence like that, it just bangs you. I say, my God. So when the mother is telling people think that time, I don't want to have controversy. You people think you're supreme, some supreme, unimaginable, you call it Brahman, you call it this. He says, I'm safe. But when she says, I carry the universe in my hands. And then it is the same little lady there sitting in a chair. She says, once on this Durga Puja day, on this famous Durga Puja day, Durga used to come to her and she says, and I do not know if it was last year or the year before. Moreover, time has no importance for me. In fact, there is not much difference. Since I have stopped giving blessings for the pujas, anyway, it was close to the pujas and as usual, Durga came to me. She was so beautiful and formidable, like all other children, but it was an entity which possesses the cosmic force. And I told her, shall there be no end to these little entities, and is it not time to turn towards the Supreme, leaving behind the little personal egos? She's telling that to Durga. And she says, Durga, and she told me, the Durga tells mother, yes, I am thine completely. What thou willest I shall do. I give myself to you. And she prostrated herself at my feet. I'm trying to recollect what was happening between death and Savitri. That when death says, show me your face, so I may worship thee. Now you see the great Mahakali, the great force, the great power. She is prostrating herself at mother's feet. It was a complete surrender. There was no hesitation. It was so beautiful. It is since then that I have stopped the blessings for the pujas. Because it's no longer necessary. It's over. Once and for all. Oh, such a fine act. Such a charming gesture. It is only to the Lord that we send our adoration and gratitude. The Supreme alone and nothing else. That chapter is over. The reign of the cosmic gods. Now only the Supreme exists for us, nothing else. One day Durga had come and I asked her a similar question. How long do you want allegiance from the people? Isn't it time we adore the Supreme? Then she told me gently, I do want to. I am thine. But you see, the people cling to me and do not want to leave me. There's one Bengali who's continuing that, and the other one is likely absent here. So he says, what do I do, mother? I want to give myself to thee. I don't want any worship. I want only the Supreme to be worshipped. You are the Supreme. I'm giving myself there. But people cling to me and do not want to leave me. And it's becoming more and more, I see during the Durga Puja, all the murtis that they prepare. Of course, aesthetically it's all beautiful. I love it. But the whole thing is becoming so full of money and, so much money poured in. And she says, mother, it's not my fault. She says, I'm thine. But people want it. So she says, they're all like that. Mother is telling, that which goes to aggrandize their egos, that which will still wants to follow the past, and the little bit which satisfies them, that they will never abandon, even the Supreme. It is man who does not want to change, because he does not want to lose his possessions and his ego. It is man who creates the distinction. You see, truly, she wanted to work for me in an act of surrender, but she was completely tied up by the people who adored her and sent their prayers for their personal gains and nothing more. Men do not want to give up, as they do not want to lose their support and their ego's satisfaction. They cling and obstruct the way. You see, yesterday again we are having some people are discussing about religion and all this religious fervor. This is exactly, men do not want to give up and they do not want to lose their support and their ego's satisfaction. So it becomes such a social thing, religion, who will do this Ganesh Puja in a bigger way, the bigger the Ganesh becomes, 10 feet, 20. It's all a social ego, money play and some kind of an ego. But from the beautiful experience, something emerged. I could get some work done in collaboration with her. It was the New Year prayer which I had written, the prayer that nature will collaborate and so on. You know it? Yes, mother. It was in this way that slowly she could abandon herself completely, and now we have no need of these pujas. She has become one with the Supreme, and it is the Supreme alone whom we adore. Now she has entered into me. You understand? Well, this was a message given in 1958. O nature, material mother, thou hast said that thou wilt collaborate, and there is no limit to the splendor of this collaboration. Well, I read out this again in connection with Savitri for two connections. One is the great death wants to worship, wants to give himself up, like did Kali or Durga. But she says, I have given myself to you. Where's the people who hang on? So mother also gives this, that you are conquered, you are transformed, but you have to continue for a while as my instrument. Because people will die for long, because they will not even believe that there can be immortality. We believe that all that is born must die. So she says, be my instrument for a while. For a while, that her while may be 22 centuries maybe. Her while is not a few years. It's again a great time. That's one thing. And secondly, to clarify, who is the Supreme? That's why I think there was an intuition thing, Savitri and the Divine Mother. They are the Divine Mother or the Supreme. That is, when I read this, I hear the voice of the Mother. I don't hear the voice of Sri Aurobindo or the Lord. So personally, it has been always the Mother speaking, the Divine Mother, because we have heard her voice, isn't it? So when the voice is saying, this is what you are, all this I have brought, we'll see it in the afternoon. So it is not the textual, it is more the consciousness. For me, it's the Divine Mother who's speaking, so I don't go by this. It was not there when I read this Savitri first time. So since the beginning, it has been always the Mother, the Divine Mother speaking to Savitri, although she says, Lord, Lord, Lord. But for me, the Supreme is only one. Well, yeah, we'll take a break here. Yeah, come. So after this, we'll come back at what time? 3:15.